On this episode of Phinside The NFL, should the Miami Dolphins trade for George Kittle? Is something that's been brought up a few times recently and then showed up in an Omar Kelly article. We will talk about that in depth. Also, have the Miami Dolphins and the way they handled the wide receiver position now become the blueprint of what not to do and the path not to follow when it comes to building a wide receiver room and paying everyone? We will talk about it all on this episode. So do me the favor, smash the like button, subscribe if you're new, and let's get into this episode powered by BetUS.
Loses the football. Touchdown! Got it! You have got to be kidding me. Jalen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score! Field down the near side, man open. Touchdown! The run from Tua Tagovailoa. Touchdown! He's going deep. He's got it for the touchdown again.
Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. Let's go!
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason, and we are back here for another one. Appreciate all of you coming through on this episode, and I hope each and every one of you are having fantastic weekends as we get into it. Something we've been doing a little bit more recently, and we'll continue doing it throughout the offseason when we can, and that is a little static video for your weekend to get you started. And that's where we are on this Saturday morning as we get ready for the Senior Bowl today. I know I can't wait to watch Jackson Dart and a lot of the prospects that are going to be out on the field. Make sure you tune in. If you aren't doing much today, it's some football. And don't just watch the quarterback position. There's going to be some great receivers out there, some great linemen on both sides. So make sure you watch it. I believe it's the second year in a row that they've sold out the Senior Bowl in terms of attendance. Over 25,000 people are actually going to be in attendance at the Senior Bowl. So, hey, I remember when we started this channel out doing Senior Bowl videos. Now, Senior Bowl videos did much more better when there was a little bit more hope and people weren't, jumping off the ship. But, we've been covering the Senior Bowl on this channel since its inception, really. So, for a long time. So, listen, I love the Senior Bowl. I love the Combine. Senior Bowl means unless you're in the Super Bowl, it pretty much means the beginning of the offseason for every team not in the Super Bowl. That's how I look at it, right? So, man, and we always get those risers to talk about, et cetera, et cetera. It's a good time. It's a good time. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you are new as you come through. We are trying to hit 17K, and then I want to get to 20K and do a big giveaway for all of you and all of those who have supported me, especially since day one. Speaking of day one, if you want to become a patron, patreon.com/Phinside The NFL. Also become a channel member, exclusive access to things I'm hearing. I had an update recently last week. Go check it out if you haven't and you are a patron or a channel member. Make sure to go check it out, all right? Like we said earlier, this video is sponsored by BetUS, and we were just talking about the Senior Bowl. And, speaking of the draft, current odds to be the first overall pick. Who is it going to be? Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Will Campbell. I think it's going to be between Cam Ward and Abdul Carter. Go over to betus.com right now. Use promo code YouTube150 and get your first 3 deposits matched by 150% up to $2,000 for all of your draft prop needs and all your Super Bowl needs coming up for all your parlays and props and money lines and spreads. Head on over to BetUS, where the game begins. 24/7 customer service, some of the quickest payouts in the industry. Shout out to BetUS for sponsoring the channel. So let's get into it. And I wanted to talk about this actually earlier in the week, but we just had other things come up. And then, the show with Neil and stuff like that, just all push this back. So, George Kittle. I've had people ask me about him over the last couple weeks. I've seen people in the comments. I've heard people on podcasts talk about it, not just like us. And, I've seen articles, even from like his alum from Iowa talking about, could he be traded, et cetera, et cetera. So let's get into this article here from Omar Kelly. It is from a couple of days ago. It's about just over a week ago, actually. And he talks about the tight end room because he's doing his position by position breakdown. And, I've been sitting on this for a minute, wanting to talk about it. I've just been pushing it back. So let's go over this. So he's doing his little position by position breakdown. And he says the tight end. He says the praise, Jonnu delivered the greatest single season by a tight end in Dolphins history. What a coincidence with Tua. Smith, a former Florida international standout, finished his first year in Miami with 88 receptions for 884 yards and 8 touchdowns, setting single-season franchise records at the tight end position in each category. His 88 receptions were 15 more than other tight ends in the season in franchise history. His 884 receiving yards broke Miami's 20-year-old single-season record set by Randy McMichael, who recorded 791 catches in 2004 by nearly 100 yards. And his 8 touchdowns set a standard for the position, which went from a side dish the previous 2 seasons to Miami's main entree in 2024. Considering this was the 29-year-old's first season in Mike McDaniel's offense, it's hard to imagine Smith can't produce more if he manages to stay healthy in 2025 and takes his understanding of the offense to the next level. The problem? Smith got off to a slow start in 2024 for various reasons, and his snaps were limited because he isn't the team's best inline blocker. That explains why Julian Hill, a second-year player Miami has been developing as an undrafted rookie from Campbell University, handled 514 offensive snaps, and Durham Smythe handled 364 offensive snaps. That's 878 offensive snaps that went to an interior athlete who doesn't present much of a threat in the passing game. If Smith can turn up the volume on his inline work, it's possible that the 8-year veteran might be able to do more. But the Dolphins will always need a complementary tight end or fullback because of how much they use heavy packages to facilitate the run game. That means it would benefit Miami if Hill, who is consistently praised for his strength, cleans up his game, or the Dolphins find an upgrade to do the inline work. The possibilities. Here you go. This is where this all comes from. There was a moment after Miami's 29-17 win over the San Francisco 49ers where mic'd up McDaniel hugs all-pro tight end George Kittle and tells him how nice South Florida is a place to live. That conversation danced the fine line between friendly banter between a player and his former coach and tampering. It should make us wonder if McDaniel knows something the 49ers don't. Kittle, who is 32, is entering the final year of his contract and is due just less than $15.5 million in 2025, and will likely be lobbying for an extension from San Fran, which has $46.5 million in cap space, but has a ton of players with their hands out looking for bigger paydays. This could be a situation where the Dolphins offer the 49ers an early round draft pick to lure Kittle in a trade and extend situation, just like how Miami secured Tyreek Hill, Bradley Chubb, and Jalen Ramsey's services. Even though the Dolphins were roughly $13 million over the projected salary cap, don't possess much cap space at the moment, this franchise has consistently found a way to create financial freedom the past couple of off seasons and annually target a whale. Kittle, who caught 78 passes and turned them into 1,106 yards, and 8 touchdowns in his 8th NFL season fits that description and would pair well with Smith, giving the Dolphins the best tight end in the NFL. This is a deep crop of draftable tight ends, with 8 being among this draft's top 150 prospects. A talent such as Mason Taylor, the son of Jason Taylor, would fit Miami's offense well as a developmental player. Taylor's a polished pass catcher and showed the ability to help in pass protection. Okay. Obviously, listen, Omar, clearly you haven't watched the film because this is one of the most talented draft classes at the tight end position in recent memory, but we'll get into that in a second. Let me get there for a minute, okay? First things first, okay? I agree, but I warned everyone about this last year in terms of what Julian Hill was. He came up on my show, did Omar Kelly. Here's a few things that I laugh about this. First of all, we're talking about Jonnu Smith having a historical position, a historical season at the position in franchise history, which all of the 2023-2024 season, every time me and Omar did the Cover 4 podcast, I kept talking about tight end is the next evolution of this offense. And then literally McDaniel said in a little sit-down interview in the offseason that, yeah, it was going to be the next evolution was tight end. I was way out ahead of this, but I had to hear from Omar Kelly every single week about how much they love Julian Hill. And I kept telling him, what has turned out to be true, that the kid is not good. And we found out? The kid is not good. Now, I do agree we need another option behind him in terms of Jonnu. And we'll get into that. But I just find it funny that we're sitting here writing this article talking about historical season, which I said a yak guy at that position, a good athlete at the position could do in this offense, because you saw what Smythe was doing down the stretch of the 2023-2024 season of threatening those seams, and you saw it was there. I was making this point all last season. Well, they love Julian Hill, and I kept balking at it, and rightfully so. So once again, something I was right about and way out ahead of that no one will talk about because they just want to focus on Tua. Anyways, a couple things here. Because he talked about the praise, the problem. Well, I got some problems with this scenario. Let's talk about it. George Kittle has no guaranteed money left on his contract. He's technically entering the final season of his contract because it's nothing but void years. Probably had a career year, best year. He's probably going to want to get an extension that makes him the highest paid tight end in the NFL. Now, the 49ers can stand pat. Kittle could talk to McDaniel and demand a trade. You know? But again, he's 32. This would be I'm going to be honest with you, if I was Lynch or whatever, yeah, I'd be trying to dump him off on McDaniel because he's 32, and I wouldn't want to make him one of the highest paid or the highest paid tight end in football. I talk about this all the time in the channel, right? Whether it's my Pittsburgh Penguins or the Miami Dolphins, what do I always talk about? Good GMs know when to get out ahead of developmental. They know when to get out ahead of contracts in terms of projecting the development of a prospect as well as the market. But good GMs in all sports, just like that, also know when to cut bait with players at the right time. And 32 years old, potentially wanting to be the top paid tight end in football, which is what the word on the street is, that might be the best time to cut bait. Hell, if you could get a 4th round pick for that, a 32-year-old tight end, let's go. Now, I feel like they're going to find a way to extend Kittle. I really do. The players love him. The staff loves him. I think he won I think it's called the Eshmont Award. He was named the team MVP this year by the players on the 49ers. And when you look at it, when you look at his contract, Kittle's contract voids after the 2025 season. All right. The Niners could restructure Kittle's contract. They saved $9.93 million this offseason, then $9.13 million in 2026, $6.82 million in 2027 because of the voided years on Kittle's contract. Now, if they extend him for 3 years, they save $10.6 million this offseason, $10.96 million in 2026, $10.92 million in 2027, and $35.2 million in 2028. So that's why they might just extend him. The problem is, though, Brock Purdy is up. They want to get that extension going with Brock Purdy this offseason. And they just gave Brandon Ayuk a new deal. Now, do they move Deebo Samuel? Maybe. I've heard rumblings about that. That's why they drafted Ricky Pearsall. I do think the Niners are going to listen and see what's out there. Now, when you look at our situation, Smythe is under contract for 2025, has a $4.83 million cap hit with no guaranteed money. 2026, 2027, 2028 of 4 years. Julian Hill is under contract in 2025 with no guaranteed money. $1.034 million cap hit, so you can just cut him. Tanner Connor has done nothing for you, and he needs to moved on from. Hayden Rucci is a cheap developmental option. He could be given a look at the tight end 3 competition in camp. But this is where me and Omar really part ways. When he says, and I quote, "This isn't a deep crop of draftable tight ends." What are we talking about right now? What are we talking about here? This draft is one of the most loaded tight end groups in recent memory. And Miami's slated to have a 3rd round compensatory pick. So that's 1 pick. The 112th pick, which is the 14th pick of round 4, plus another 4th round compensatory pick due to Wilkins leaving for Vegas, right? The 3rd round compensatory pick is from Robert Hunt. They've got the 142nd pick, which is the 12th pick in the 5th round, and the 149th pick, which is the 19th pick in the 5th round. I mean, from the 3rd to 5th round, they've got 5 picks. There's flexibility to draft a tight end there, or to use a pick from the 5th or next year's draft to move back up into, say, like the 4th and snag someone if they keep falling. Or maybe even try to move up. I don't know. I don't know who they might like, but I mean, I don't. It's the same argument of why I said don't get Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland, because Harold Fannin, Mason Taylor, Gunnar Helm, Elijah Arroyo, Aronde Gadsden, Luke Lachey. I mean, you want to even go deeper than that. Terrence Ferguson, Jake Brenningstool, who is at the Senior Bowl right now. I mean, when you look at just between Harold Fannin, Mason Taylor, Gunnar Helm, Elijah Arroyo, Aronde Gadsden, and Luke Lachey, those are 6 names right there who are probably going to be they're going to go from in between the top 60. They're going to start going in, around 60 to about 150-ish. Right, falling in what I was talking about. You've got 5 picks between the 3rd and the 5th round. Maybe package that 112th with something from next year, because you might be getting more comp picks, and go up and get Mason Taylor if he's still lingering, or Gunnar Helm if they're still there. Or what if Luke Lachey is sitting there with that other 4th round compensatory pick? Or what if Mason Taylor's on the board where that third round compensatory pick falls? Or again, Gunnar Helm is. I just, here's the issue. Like, this is the thing, right? Kittle is one of the best in the business and would be another dog added. You know, but isn't this repeating the same thing over again? He even mentioned it in the article. When he mentioned Tyreek Hill, Bradley Chubb, didn't any of you shudder? Because again, you're going to have to trade assets for an aging star, and you're going to have to double dip once more. Picks will be needed to acquire him, and money will be needed to be paid to extend him, to keep him happy, and ultimately make him want to be traded here. You're going to have to make him the top paid tight end, while giving up. This guy's talking about, you know, like, it sounds like it's going to be a second or third round pick. Are you crazy? If I got to make him the top paid tight end, I'll give you a fifth. He's 32. If you're giving up a second, a third, or a fourth for a 32-year-old that you got to also make, that is nuts. At least with Tyreek and Chubb, you could say they were in their mid to late 20s. Are we serious right now? We're going to give 32-year-old tight end that takes that kind of beating in that type of position, a 3-year contract, and make him the top paid tight end. That is nuts. So it'll be 35, 36, and they'll backload it probably. That doesn't make sense. It was such a good class. I'd rather target a tight end with that compensatory pick spot. Give me, you know, I'm going to tell you this. Give me Mason Taylor, Gunnar Helm, you know, Luke Lachey, Harold Fannin. Give me one of those guys. Hell, give me Elijah Arroyo. Go for Rodney Gadsden, Bloodline. Give me one of these guys between the 3rd to the 5th round all day. It just doesn't make any sense to me. This is like having the conversation about drafting Tyler Warren at 13. I don't think this is a good use of your assets. And like, let's be honest here. Do you want Gary McDaniel using more draft and financial capital out of desperation when they may be gone? This would deplete the ingredients in the cupboard for that new regime to come in and cook with. If I was Ross, I wouldn't even sign on something like that. Now, if you're going to get me Brock Bowers, let's have a conversation. But even still, I don't know. Listen, would I love George Kittle? Sure. But I just don't agree with giving up all that assets, man. You know, like, just doesn't make sense to me. That would look like another irresponsible move just to try and win faith and hope back with the fan base because we landed another big name. I don't know, man. I can't get down with that. I would love the player. But again, how many times do I got to say on this channel? I said it when we got Tyreek. I said it when we got Bradley Chubb. I talk about it all the time. One of Bill Parcells' mottos. You know, you don't pay twice for a player. Look at how many times we've done it. And we're sitting here crying about our depth on certain key positions all over the field. Why? Because we've given up so many draft picks that would have been required to build the depth. This is why we got to rely on Liam Eichenberg and Robert Jones, you know, and Duke Riley for a certain extended period of time. You know what I mean? This is or an aging Kendall Lamb because or Julian Hill and Durham Smythe because you didn't build your depth through the draft and prepare yourself before moving off of Robert Hunt, et cetera, et cetera. Why? Because you use a lot of premium picks, day 2 picks, et cetera, that would have been used to backfill this team. So, no. Done. I even want you to be careful with who you restructure, because I want you to restructure the right people, and keep and make some space and go spend on the offensive line. But I think this has got to be built with smart spending through free agency and good drafting, and you got to hit and you got to find some year 1 producers in this draft. Period. So, now, one other thing I wanted to talk about is it's crazy what a year can do. We have gone from apparently the blueprint of how to build a wide receiver room to the path not to follow if you want to build a wide receiver room correctly. What am I talking about? Listen to what Dan Orlovsky said.
Dan, what would you prioritize here? I think it's pretty simple, but
I think there's a 0% chance Jamar Chase plays elsewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no shot that Joe lets him leave. I don't think there's any shot the Bengals let him leave. He's probably going to go for $160 plus, $125 million guaranteed, because that's a little bit more than Justin got. I don't think you can keep Joe, Jamar, and T at the value that T is going to get, because then you start to really risk following almost the Dolphins' path of paying the 2 receivers and the quarterback. You're not going to beat a lot of teams unless you draft incredibly well. So I think you're prioritizing Jamar and Trey Hendrickson, because also, again, one, the building a football team. Joe and Jamar were unbelievable this year, and you didn't get
So, I mean, you heard what he said right there. I mean, he basically called out the Miami Dolphins as not being how you want to build it and not prioritizing properly. You know? He talks about this being a risk. And what did he talk about? He said, you're not going to beat a lot of teams unless you draft incredibly well. And what was the problem? Yes, he's drafted well. Look at last year, you know, the potential of Patrick Paul, Chop Robinson, what Malik gave us, the potential of Jalen Wright. But then you look at all the picks he hasn't even made over the last couple of years, because, again, we go back to these big picks that he's traded that could have supplemented. Hell, even the pick we lost because of tampering. That pick could have been Sam Laporta, and we wouldn't be talking about drafting a tight end right now. You know, it's crazy to me. You know, it's funny how from 2022 to 2023, everyone was jealous of the Waddle-Tyreek combo, and now because of a down season, it's frowned upon, and it's now you're seeing it used as a standard of what not to do or the pattern not to fall into. And listen, they aren't wrong. But it's just funny to see it all flip. We knew, Dolphin fans, though, we knew 2026 at the latest would be Tyreek's last year. And by that, we mean after the 2025-2026 season. There's a reason why Miami waited so long to give him new money last offseason. They were evaluating their options of replacing Tyreek and, and when to move off of him, even if they do give him new money. I mean, that's why at the draft last year, and I've told you all this how many times, that they were sniffing around Rome Odunze. And the possibility of if Rome Odunze made it outside of the top 10, what would it cost? Because if he was attainable, they would have went up to get him. And guess what? Tyreek wouldn't have been paid. This is why I've warned people the quiet need of wide receiver with Emeka Egbuka being a sleeper pick at 13, it's real. It's also why I've highlighted guys like Savion Williams, Jaden Higgins, and James Best recently on the Senior Bowl. They want a cheap, high-ceiling option that can stretch the defense vertically. Obviously not as quickly or as deadly as Tyreek, if you can, even if you can. But they want to be strong at the catch point so they can make contested catches, high-point footballs, and add an element in terms of size along the sideline and in the red zone they currently don't have when it comes to their trusted wide receiver options. You know, this is why Ted McMillan is the dream and the prototype for me. I'd even advocate for trading up if McMillan slipped to down to 8 or lower. You know, within a 5-spot reach because he's cheap, would be under contract for 5 years and adds the element they need, but he'll probably be gone. So, but you got to look at it this way with Tyreek. You know, it'd be a post-June 1st move anyways, so they have plenty of time to weigh their options. Especially, you know, if an enticing one presents itself to Miami during free agency or the draft. I don't see them being in play for T. Higgins. You know, I've had people ask, hey, move off. No, I don't see that happening. You know, I think they're looking for the next cheap option, but I do think they're willing to spend a premium pick on that option if it is the right player. I do believe that. I think that's, you know, as much as I talk as edge would be a sneaky pick, especially depending on what they do with Bradley Chubb. Wide receiver, I keep warning y'all. And you look at Ibuka, great blocker. You know, you look at some of the guys there, like, you know, Higgins, and he can block too. Like, they go find guys that can block and that are big body and can stretch you a little vertically. You know, I don't think they're expecting 4.2 speed, even 4.3, but they can find a 4.4 guy, low 4.4 guy. You know, if it's high 4.3, then that's even better. And by high, I mean like 4.39. But if they can go find like a guy in the low 4.4s, like 4.41, 4.42, but he's got size on him, I think that's ideal for them. So I'm telling you, I got a feeling. Emeka Ibuka makes a ton of sense for them because he's just, you know, he's just such a sure catcher. You can play out of the slot. You put some more weight on him, I think he'll be fine off the boundary because he's already taken snaps out of the boundary at Ohio State. And he's just such a willing blocker, so I think he'd be able to do what they need to do. But listen, there's options here. I know people have talked about running back or, you know, quarterback, but you look at the realistic weapons you got to upgrade at. The tight end room, like we spoke of earlier. The wide receiver room still needs more upgrades for sure. You know, listen, there's a world where they come away with a developmental quarterback on day 3 or as a UDFA, one name that we know, as well as a wide receiver and a tight end in this draft that are ones we know as well. So, man, I can't wait. I can't wait to see how free agency plays out and we start to see the depth chart fill. So it kind of makes the draft, the vision for that draft a little bit more clear, especially when it comes to the big boards I'm going to release and the players we're really going to have to put further under a microscope because, you know, I always look at that as the first step of answers in the offseason. And if you really do the math, we're not far away from free agency. It is February 1st. We are just a little over a month away from the tampering window opening. So things are going to get interesting. And then, and then a month after free agency, a month and a bit, we got the draft, baby. So things are about to pick up. We got the Super Bowl this weekend. We got the Senior Bowl today on Saturday. So, man, I know our season is done, but the season of work and the season of retooling is just beginning. Let's hope what they build is not a dud like it was this year. My Lord, for the sake of all of our sanity. From the casual fans to the hardcore fans, from the people scrolling on Twitter to the content creators on all platforms, we all deserve better, and let's hope we can get better in 2025. That's for sure. What I would ask you to do right now is please smash that like button, subscribe if you're new. I hope you enjoyed it. If anything breaks this weekend, I will be back. If not, expect to see me probably at the start of your new week, Super Bowl week, on Monday. But if anything does break or anything comes together, then you will probably see me again this weekend. But until next time, you don't know what time it is. Fins up all day, every day. And shout out to BetUS for sponsoring this video. I will see each and every one of you on the next one.